Bill McNally. Welcome to America's Future. My guest today is Dr. Mildred Jefferson, Texas-born, and served as general surgeon with the former Boston University Medical Center as assistant surgical professor of surgery at the Boston University, and she taught there for many years. She is a founding member of the state and national Right to Life movement, and currently she is the president of the Right to Life Crusade. Welcome to Windham, New Hampshire, Dr. Jefferson.
Well, thank you so much, Bill. I'm not a stranger here.
Oh, that's right. You said you get the Windham Independent.
I get the Windham Independent. I do indeed. And I consider Salem one of my homes away from home.
We're lucky today we have some members in the audience. I'd just like to thank them for coming and introduce them. Joan Espinola, Pat Kennedy, Angie Hyatt, and Mary Weaver. Thank you for coming. And is there anything in the bio, I know I wanted to include everything, but something maybe I might have left out that you could include for me?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what your viewers might be interested in, but I've had a career-long interest in medical jurisprudence and problems of the law-medicine interface. And I am in public policy debates and active because I believe that if we as citizens want to build the kind of country in which we want to live, build the kind of communities and neighborhoods that will reflect our values, then we have to make our voices heard.
Now, I had heard that you ran for the United States Senate against Ted Kennedy, is that correct?
I ran for the opportunity of running against Senator Ted Kennedy, and unfortunately, members of my own party decided that they preferred sending a male millionaire out to challenge another male millionaire, but they had not listened to the computers of some of our strategists who decided, or at least who, going on all of the predictable measurements, decided the best candidate to run against that particular senator was a woman who was not a lawyer, who may have come from a vastly different background, who had the kind of grassroots experience that gave her a base within his built-in base. In fact, if you look at the computer profile, you would have thought someone was describing me. But unfortunately, my allies were a little bit too narrow-minded and blind to see that, so they sent their traditional kind of candidate out to lose again. But I think, unfortunately, most of the others do not really want to defeat him. They only want to say that they tried, but they weren't really interested, because if you notice, for those who met him on the ballot, by the time they got to that one or less debate that they had with him, their consultants were having them almost me too, the senior senator from Massachusetts, who, by the way, has had a very detrimental effect to your own New Hampshire politics.
All right, well, now you describe yourself as a Republican social policy activist.
Exactly.
What does that mean?
Well, it means, first of all, that you don't have to be a Democrat to be concerned about the social issues of our country and our people. And if you are concerned, then it's your obligation to have to do something about them. And I specifically underline my Republican identification so people will know just that. Because if you look back to the history of the parties, it was the Republican Party that was founded to be the party of the people at the time when this country was on the verge of becoming a landed oligarchy ruled by the large plantation owners in the South. So that's why I try always to make people understand that. Now, I have to draw a very clear line. The Right to Life movement has no one politics. We bring together people from all political parties and no parties at all, the major parties and all of the splinters, and you will notice that the majority of splinters that are not far left do have right-to-life positions. And it is our objective as a right-to-life movement that all major or significant parties in the United States will understand that defending the right to life is the cornerstone and foundation of our democratic republic, and no party should gain any kind of following unless it does do first defending the right to life.
In your opinion, does it matter whether Republicans or Democrats are in power?
It does, because we fought as a movement on both sides of the aisle. When I say as a movement, I mean not just the Right to Life movement, but all of the organizations that comprise the pro-life, pro-family movement. But the left wing of the Democratic Party defeated us on that side, and we defeated the Rockefeller wing of the Republican Party on their left side. So as long as the control of the delegates that make the decisions at the conventions remain as they are, it is highly unlikely that any pro-life Democrat will get the nomination for the presidency on the Democratic side, because their platform will be so constructed that he or she could not do so. And on the Republican side, as long as we control the apparatus that determine the platform, it will have a right to life plank, and we will try to make it impossible for a candidate who does not defend the right to life to get the nomination.
Why do you think Democrats then regained control of both houses in the Congress?
Because they played a very, very good strategic game. And I will not diminish that in any way. I will give Dr. Howard Dean, who is the national chairman of the Democratic Party, and Senator Chuck Schumer from New York City, well, not New York City, but New York State, great credit for the kind of strategic moves they made. Now, it wasn't their strategy alone that called the day, because if you look at the kind of campaign that has been waged against President Bush and Republicans since 2000, and just reiterated in 2004, with everything that you can muster, the majority of the major media, the entertainment industry, the who knows what all else, creating this surge of trying somehow to insinuate Democratic control. That eventually has a telling effect. But if you look closely at the strategy of the Dean-Schumer coalition, you will see that they went into areas, carefully targeted areas, where Republicans weren't looking, but they also targeted many of those pro-abortion Republicans who they knew pro-lifers would not come out to rescue. And although I'm sure the pro-abortion Republicans thought they were currying favor, when it was time for them to be sacrificed, they were cut off without a second thought. But I will not in any way deny that they made a remarkable strategic effort which they carried out. I must admit, on my side, I don't like the way our coalitions responded, because we knew a year ago that things were not as they should be to face the kind of onslaught the Democrats were going to make. My allies forgot one central thing: no battle remains won. As soon as the battle is over, whoever you've defeated is going to fight back to defeat you. You cannot rest. And I think sort of coasting on what had happened before and telling oneself that, oh, well, the country has moved along, it has switched to the conservative tide, but that's not the case. The majority of people in this country don't consider themselves either conservative or liberal. They are just out there in the middle of the road trying to get by on a day-to-day basis. And whenever we make those grandiose projections, we come to grief.
I wanted to make one comment here. We'll get right back into that question, but I seem to have lost my notes. Help me if I'm... And at an introduction on a previous speaking engagement, I think it was Hal Shurtleff was introducing you, and he said that you were the first Negro black woman to graduate from Harvard Medical School.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And
I usually say I was the leader of the line of women who look like me through Harvard Medical School. Because frankly, I don't like the confrontational language of the Jesse Jacksonites who have moved on now to African American, which I don't think can be justifiably be used unless someone has held joint citizenship in the countries that they are combining. And I use the word Negro simply because an anthropologist at Harvard, Ernest Houghton, I think back in around 1925, created definitions of general groupings of people by their geographic origin because he didn't feel that race had any special significance beyond the social connotations that people tried to give it. So he preferred going just on something more neutral, and he felt by using the word Negro, which meant black in Spanish, it would not have any connotation to English speakers. So through time, people still are attached to all those things in spite of their revering Martin Luther King Jr., who wanted to live for a time when his children would be judged by the content of their character rather than by the color of their skins, but they still have to carry around the skin jacket to slip on and to look out through. So the country has moved ahead to some extent, but there are people who will always pull it back, and they need to get out of the groove.
Well, I remember Hal said that he could tell by looking at you that you were a Harvard woman. He said, but you can't tell her much.
Well, in a sense, he may be right there, because there is some awareness that maybe we do have that ear, that special inner ear, and get the word directly and straight right from God himself.
All right, getting back to the questioning there, what do you think the impact of the Democratic control will be, let's say first, I want to ask on the economy, the domestic, and the Middle East, but let's start with the economy, okay?
Well, I think it's going to have a devastating effect on the economy. If you look at Massachusetts, that now has a Democratic governor and such an overwhelming Democratic control of its legislature or great and general court, the first thing the incoming governor wanted to do is to undo all of the budget cuts that the outgoing Governor Romney had wanted to make. Now, if it is anything like the federal government budget cutting, it's not an actual cut anyway. When they refer to budget cuts, it's only the difference between what the Democrats recommended and what the governor wanted. But there was no zero-based budgeting. They could not go back to the figure they had the previous year or even consider going less. And that means that taxes are going to rise in Massachusetts, even though they may be disguised as something else. And that is going to put a serious jolt into the Massachusetts economy. But I would anticipate on the federal level that with the Democrats in control of both houses of Congress and especially controlling the House of Representatives that controls the federal purse, we are going to see increased taxes and fees in general areas. And with their rushing off to create all of their investigations and oversights, this is going to run up much, much more in terms of management and oversight. And I would expect the eventual effect, even by '08, to be a slowing of the economy and predictions of a downturn. Unfortunately, I hope they do not succeed in trying to hamper our preparations for national defense and the fight against terrorism, But with the kind of actions that they are taking, I wouldn't be surprised if that were not in effect.
What about then the impact of the Democrats, their control will be on the domestic social policy? How will they handle that?
Well, unfortunately, you will notice that many, well, I can't say many, but a certain segment of the New Democrats have ostensibly taken positions that are supposed to be pro-life. Though because of that, they have come forward with a series of legislative proposals which they have put forth in the idea of keeping abortion legal, as they say, but trying to make it rare. Well, that's not something we support, because we are not interested in, quote, keeping it legal but rare, because we know as long as there's any legal permission, it's going to promote it and make it more frequent. They also have some proposals for providing some degree of federal help to women who are pregnant and so on. Nothing will distract from the matter that unless you take away the permission, you will always have more people push toward it than away from it. And as long as you have government funding going out in that direction, that's going to keep a very high motivation, not from the poor women who undergo them, but from the ones who collect the fee. And that's what people have to always keep in mind.
Okay, let's go into, take a look, get your views on the United States policy in the Middle East.
Well, unfortunately, if you look at the approach taken by the Democrats you hear from, I dare say you don't get to hear very much from the ones who don't support the positions held by Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid and the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. And that is to create this great furor and fanfare for getting out of Iraq. I wonder why they want to bring the war here. I wonder why they don't notice that you have a conflagration, a conflict in the Middle East, which is not just Iraq. You've got Iran, you've got Libya, you've got all of the rest. You've got Palestine, you've got Israel, and they are all embroiled. There is no way the United States can just run home, pull up the covers and hide under them and hope that somehow it will all go away. It won't. And I mind that we have in Washington people who are too snobbish to understand they're dealing with very, very clever, very, very crafty people who are descended from people who were fighting wars before there was a United States. And many of the tactics they are using have been tested for 1,000 years. And yet, we go in as if we are going into some little backwater where they never even saw a uniformed soldier. We cannot face the world with that kind of nonsense. We also have to get out of that Eurocentric barrier that the Democrats have surrounded themselves with. I don't see them asking for us to get out of Bosnia, but they are wanting to get out of the Middle East. I don't know why they're so snobbish toward the Middle East, but I would hope my fellow Americans would speak up and stop them from making all of these outrageous recommendations in the name of the American people, because I am one of the American people, and I do not agree with anything they have to say, whether it is Senator Reid or Representative Pelosi or the two senators from my own Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Well, what about not declaring war as, the Congress is supposed to have the
Well, the Congress has the constitutional power of declaring war, and that's a good thing, because if the Congress had already declared war, I would consider that the Democratic leadership and the actions they have taken and the speeches that they have made and the aid and comfort they have been giving to the enemies of our country who are waging the battle there it would be treason. So since they have not declared war, that's the only thing that saves them. However, I do not believe that they have the moral right to try to hamper the commander-in-chief, President Bush, and jeopardize the men and women who are carrying out their patriotic duty to defend our country and its name as a defender of freedom.
So how long do you think, I mean, do you think we can restore a, well, they call it a democracy, but as you and
Well, we can't restore democracy. They've never had one.
They've never had one, right.
Yes, they have never had one. We have the problem that there are many people there who don't want democracy. There are many people there who don't want peace. There are many people there who don't want anything except their particular religious group or its own segment of that religious group to triumph. But there have to be, somewhere among them, enough people to create a stable environment and government. And I would like to speak out very strongly against those who insist that there's a civil war there, because there is no contending formal government waging it. It is civil unrest, of course, but I think it is very dishonest for those who want to justify turning tail because a civil war has broken out.
So do you think we can, is the word win?
It's not a matter of winning, and I'm sorry that we had to go in with the idea of winning. We are there, I hope, to create one more solid bastion to protect the concept of freedom and democratic government, and to keep away, at least by a few years more, having that kind of strife on our own shores, because Al-Qaeda accomplished what no other enemy of the United States has accomplished on the scale that it did. It did harm the face of the U.S. mainland, and it killed Americans right here. Not even Hitler succeeded in doing that.
You're going to be a guest on my show immediately after this one. We're going to be talking strictly about the right to life, but getting back to Iraq, do you believe, or do you think that Iran and Iraq could possibly unite in one and come against us instead
I don't think they can unite and come against us, but I don't put it past Iran to try to conquer Iraq and force it in combination with Iran against us. I think people may forget that the way Saddam Hussein managed to secure coming into power is that once the Shah of Iran had fallen, we had to somehow create a bulwark to prevent Iran from taking over Iraq.
Good. You know, I just wanted to ask you one, because I know you follow the news and everything, but do you remember, would you comment on this issue here, the Border Patrol, where these two wonderful Mexican citizens of the United States are now in jail for like 11 and 12 years or something like that for protecting our borders? Did you follow that situation? Can you comment on that?
Well, all I can say is I see every day what I consider tragedies, and it seems that those who are trying to defend our freedoms are persecuted, and those who ignore them and are trampling over them manage to be lionized and rewarded. Though I don't know what solution there can be in this, but I should hope that in the way we always find some way to get people out of circumstances like that when their objectives have been sound, that something will. But I have no idea what that's going to be.
I understand.
Or who will come forward.
Well, I understand that people are writing to President Bush, the senators, and asking for a pardon for these two agents.
I don't know what President Bush actually gets to see. I don't have the same kind of relationship in the Bush White House that we had in the Reagan White House, because in the Reagan White House, for almost anything that was a problem, we knew we could get directly to President Reagan's ear. And before he was shot, we met with him fairly often, and I'm happy to say that he would always get my opinion first.
All right, we have a few more minutes left. Can you comment on the comment that I think it was Representative Tom Tancredo? He was here in New Hampshire.
Oh, is that so? He is what, running for House of Representatives in Colorado?
Well, he is a representative. He's exploring the presidential.
He's running for president. That's right.
Exploring that race. But
so he's not running for re-election?
I'm not
to
sure.
his own seat?
I think. Can you do both?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't checked
he might be
the
doing
Colorado
both. He's here
situation.
for a feeler to see if he can get any support.
Well, that's right.
The president.
Primary is far enough ahead.
That's
so
right.
that,
the 208.
Yeah.
Right. But you know what he said? He said each person should do all they can do. He says, I'll do all that I can do. And he says, in other words, to preserve freedom in America, each person has to do
Well, that's very true, because we are neither weak nor few as long as one man does what one can do. Now, that came from someone who may not necessarily agree with us on much else, Archibald MacLeish, but that is true. And that's another way of stating that old Chinese journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So that means if one person does something, you get something done.
So each person can do whatever he can do. Right?
Yep.
Okay, well, I really appreciate your coming here to Windham and doing this interview. And I'd like to thank the guests who came to watch, some of your friends and mine. And I'd like to thank the Windham Cable Studio, the staff, the volunteers. Appreciate all the help. And I look forward to my next interview with Dr. Mildred Jefferson on the Right to Life movement. And thank you, the viewer, for watching.